When we come back, can homelessness ever be eradicated? We meet the woman who is convinced it can be. See you in a couple of minutes. Now, for a very brief period in the pandemic, we managed to find a home for everyone who needed one. Sleeping rough briefly became a thing of the past. So how has it made an unwelcome return? Earlier, I caught up with Lindsay, Cordery-Bruce from the Woolwich Homeless Charity. She spent 6 years trying to tackle the problem and is about to take up a new role with the Wales Council for voluntary action. Lindsay, how has your job changed over the last 6 years?
Well, it's been a bit of a ride the last 6 years in homelessness. So we've seen a journey where there was really high levels of rough sleeping. We saw the start of the spice pandemic and that becoming more and more popular. We've seen a lot of different drugs come and go. We've seen the COVID pandemic happen where everybody then came in, and now we're in a situation where people are starting to come back out onto the streets. So it's been a real varied portfolio over the last 6 years.
And have demands for the services you provide changed?
Yeah, demand for our services have definitely gone up. Particularly since the pandemic, we've seen not just higher volumes of people, but people in a higher level of mental and psychological distress. And at the moment, there's about 12,500 people in emergency accommodation, in temporary accommodation, and very few places to move people onto.
We're constantly told that it's a very complex problem, homelessness, no one thing. What are the different types of homelessness that you're encountering?
Well, we work mostly with rough sleepers, but there are very different types of homelessness. There's a hidden homeless population that actually we were able to make contact with during the pandemic. So people who are sofa surfing, and people who are maybe stuck in hidden relationships, unstable accommodation. There's also people who might be in housing, but that housing is at risk, and they know they're going to lose it within a certain amount of time. So yeah, it's a very varied client group. We're also seeing a lot of professionals lately as well who are perhaps living in cars. So it's
why?
Because the amount that people charge for rent doesn't correspond with the amount that people earn. So relationship breakdown remains to be the top cause of homelessness in Wales. But if people don't have the means to work their way out of that, then they are having to resort to cars and people's sofas and other urgent solutions.
You mentioned the pandemic. We almost saw rough sleeping eradicated during the pandemic. How has it been allowed to return?
Well, there was a drive from Welsh Government, everybody in, when the pandemic came. So they commissioned hotels and other like accommodation units in tourism, which weren't full because there was no travel. So everybody came into those units, but the sustainable accommodation is still in short supply. So you've got people that come into emergency and then aren't necessarily able to move on afterwards.
Does that suggest that if there's a will, there's a way?
I am still of the belief that homelessness can be solved, and I think with enough resource and political belief we can do it, but we need to build a lot more homes and make those affordable and make those of adequate quality for people to live in. So there's a lot of progress that's been made in relation to homelessness and housing, all of which is leading us towards this human right of housing and a right to an adequate, affordable home. But that's going to need to play out politically over the course of the next few years.
Lindsay, a hugely demanding job. What gives you satisfaction?
I think what gives me satisfaction is the amount of people that have made it, the amount of people that have come out the other side and found sustainable accommodation. There's a guy that we met in 2017, for instance, who he did the Homeless World Cup, and he was in a really chaotic situation. He's been in stable accommodation now for over a year, and now he's joining our shadow board to help run the Woolwich. So it's stories like that that just make it really worth it. There's a lot of chaos in homelessness, but there's still hope, and there's a lot of people that come through the other side and build the life that they want.
I mean, the Welsh Government aims to end homelessness in Wales. I suppose you must believe that's doable, otherwise you wouldn't do the job.
I absolutely believe we can end homelessness in Wales. There's a lot that needs to fall into place. So we've got a new white paper on homelessness, for example. There's a green paper about the right to an adequate home. All the political chess pieces are falling into place. And I'm really optimistic that the house building programme Welsh Government are committed to, that's still on track. It's going to take decades to solve homelessness, but I do still think we can do it.
And do you think that right to a home will make a real difference?
It's an enforceable right to an adequate home. So that's the thing that will make a difference.
Got teeth then?
Yeah, if you look at things like the Grenfell disaster, that's when everyone really started talking about the right to an adequate home, an enforceable right to an adequate home. So we've started putting the pieces together to make that happen, and now we've got all roads legislatively in Wales are headed in that direction. So if I see that achieved in my lifetime, I'll die very happy.
What are your aims in the new job? What targets have you set yourself?
I think my main target is just to get to know the organisation and all the people involved. There's a lot of new stakeholders that I need to meet, because WCVA, they have relationships with all charities, so there's a lot of people and sectors that I've never been involved with, so that's going to be really exciting. What I really want to do is strengthen the relationship between the voluntary sector and Welsh Government. There's a lot of really ambitious Welsh Government plans that say, oh, and we'll involve the third sector. What does that mean? So I want to bring some real clarity around that so that we can create a movement for volunteering in Wales.
Not tempted to go into politics yourself?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
I've got too much to say for myself. I'd instantly be in trouble.
Well, Lindsay, we wish you every success in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's it for